A little about me. Started Change Connect about 11 years ago. Really put focus on the idea, and we're a full stack management consulting firm. So really start putting the emphasis on sales efficiency, sales process, sales technology, definitely in the last little bit, and try to drive efficiency through sales. Now, 11 years later, we're a team of about 12, so we're still considered a boutique firm. We specialize in sales training, sales technology stacking, definitely lots of sales compensation structure right now. And Marie, I see that you're here. We actually also have a module specifically to drive sales management and accountability. So quite a bit that we do in the sales area at the moment. And that is our focus. Okay, just so that we're making sure that you're in the right room today. Number one, we're going to talk about what is a good value proposition, right? A value proposition can be such a buzzword. Oh, we need a good value proposition, or we have great value propositions. But what defines a good value proposition versus one that's not so good, right? And what exactly are we talking about as we talk about value proposition? Number one. Number two, we're going to talk a little bit about tailoring your value proposition, not being generic. And I'm going to be very critical. If a couple of you guys are brave souled enough to try to put your value proposition out there for the group to evaluate and help, I think that would be a fantastic exercise to be amongst your peers to discuss the various different ways of tailoring your value proposition. Of course, next, we're going to talk about understanding your own value proposition, because it is not like a script. Value proposition needs to be communicated, and communication means two ways. It means you're listening for cue. You're saying the right thing at the right time so that the information can be digested appropriately from the other end. It isn't that you just throw a bunch of words out there that your sales manager tells you to throw out there and then say, hey, I told them on my value proposition. They didn't go for it. It's not quite like that. So when you layer what in, last but not least, I left quite a bit of time for Q&A today, but because I think this particular topic isn't one where, because we do sales playbook as well for organizations, and sales playbook is pretty cut and dry. You have your stage, how you define your stage, what is your objective, what are the information exchange per stage, what are the objections that you get per stage, what are the advancement criteria and advancement ratio per stage. So getting a sales playbook, the actual framework itself is pretty cut and dry, but when you get into the nitty-gritty, like a value proposition that layers throughout your playbook, it can actually get quite complicated depending on how you communicate your value proposition. So it isn't just so black and white as to follow an agenda. So far, so good. All right. What is a good value proposition? Of course, I always start off with that because, a value proposition, everyone thinks, salespeople is we're not copywriters, right? And copywriters, as a matter of fact, belongs to another team. So sometimes there's a disconnect between what the marketing people are saying and what we're saying. And in today's day and age, a lot of the copywriting is actually outsourced to somebody that doesn't even know our product. So I'm standing here thinking, well, yeah, there's some verbiage given to me as value proposition, but is that the right value proposition that's going to connect with my client? So let's start off. Remember I talked to you about having a couple of brave souls. So let's start off with what's your value proposition? I don't want the brave soul now. Okay, it's more about good and bad. Think about your value proposition that you put in front of your client every day. You have that in mind? Show of hand when if you're ready. Okay. Now, let's move on. So when we're talking about value proposition, one of the things that I'm going to call some people out today. So A good value proposition. I don't know how many of you guys use Grammarly. I love Grammarly. It helps me not to think very much about writing. But about Grammarly, their value proposition is very easy to understand. If you think about it, all they're saying is great writing simplified. Think about that. Great writing simplified. First things first, the statement very easy to understand. Okay, and if you think about it, and if we have to break it down into what the framework I'm going to work with you on today is, who are your customer? Okay, what are the problem and what is the value you bring to the table? It's fairly simple, right? Great writing simplifies. I can guess at the customer. Is anyone that wants better writing, or anyone that have problem with writing, right? The problem is, well, they're probably making mistakes, whether that's grammar mistakes, spelling mistake, whatever the mistake might be. So it's fairly easy for someone that reads, like, you know, if I fall into the avatar of what Grammarly have to offer, when I read that, I can understand and I can pick out the value, right? Compose bold, clear, mistake-free writing with Grammarly's AI-powered writing assistant. So it's a writing assistant. I can understand what I'm buying. What is the value proposition here? I can probably, as an avatar that is quite attracted to this value proposition, that I know that it's going to save me time. It is going to make me sound more professional. I'm not going to have silly mistakes. Okay. Then is that silly mistake worth $14.99 a month? Yeah, maybe. Because you have to now equate that to an actual dollar and cent for ROI. Now, what does a bad, I guess you say bad, not as good value proposition sound like or look like? So I picked out the one for Grocery Getter, right? The grocery app that does it all. Well, okay. I'm not really, when I first read that, I'm thinking, what does it all mean? Is it comparing prices? Is it going to bring grocery to my door? Is it going to give me the best food to eat if I'm healthy, or if I need a gluten-free diet? What does it really tell me? Well, in 2018, this is quite dated, you get the best prices online for phone, clothes, or what? And so much more. Why not grocery? No, now I'm sitting here thinking, well, does the avatar that needs to buy or would use Grocery Getter, would they also go, I guess, online to search for best phone prices, best clothes prices? Is that what they're trying to do? So if I go back to the Grammarly, and when I dissect the Grammarly statement, is the customer or the avatar they're chasing after, is that clear? Is the problem that they're trying to address clear? Is the value they're trying to address clear? Okay, that's where I have the biggest problem is I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. Are they targeting busy moms that have no time to comparison shop, but they care that they get the cheapest grocery price? But if I am a busy mom trying to drive 3 kids to soccer practice at different time, I'm thinking, well, you know, if Village Grocer has a special on roast beef and Longo's has a special on bubbly water, I'm thinking I'm likely, if I'm a busy mom of 3, I'm not going to go to both Village Grocer and Longo's just so that I can get the best prices. So I'm unsure. I'm unsure what's going on here. So perhaps if their value proposition is a bit more simple, like get the best pricing and specials on groceries near you, right? Then I realize, oh, this is a flyers app, right? It's going to condense all my flyers into one place so I can see where is best to get my grocery this week, for example, right? Something a bit more simple. So when you look at it, value proposition cannot be a one size fit all answer. Okay. One thing that I like, and Steph knows this for sure, is one thing, and it's a habit of mine when I drive, well, obviously none of us really drive that much anymore, or I'm trying not to drive as much anymore. But when I drive, one of the things I always like to do is to turn on the radio. And personally, I turn on 680 News. That's my favorite channel. That's my favorite frequency. So when I turn on 680 News, I'm thinking, and I listen to the ads a lot, right? The reason why I listen to the ads a lot, and the reason why I like as a salesperson to listen to radio ads is because radio ads must, because there's no visual, right? Radio ads must have a very defined customer they're chasing after, a very defined problem that they're trying to resolve, and the value has to be articulated. So as an addict, that's why I'm a sales trainer for a reason, I would actually dissect every radio ad to see if that was a good radio ad versus not a good radio ad, and break down exactly which avatar they're trying to talk to. So one of the good exercise, or one exercise I want you to go do today is go to your, I'm assume you have a value proposition library based on avatar type. If you don't have one, probably a good exercise to do one. Like in one of our training session for value proposition, actually, not only do we have value proposition per avatar type, we actually talked about when is a good time to bring up that value proposition, because throwing a bunch of value proposition right at introduction is probably not a good idea. So when is a good time to drop various different type of value proposition that's appropriate for that avatar? So there should be a library in your playbook for this purpose. But for today's conversation, think about your value proposition, one that you always use, and you think, does it match up? Is the customer that I'm trying to chase after, is it well defined? Is the problem you're trying to resolve for the avatar well defined, and is the value there? Okay, think about it. And sometimes it's not in the value proposition that I worry about, is the verbiage that's coming out of your mouth, whether that is articulated appropriately so it draws appropriate connection with the person you're speaking to. So far, so good. Now, I'm going to work backwards and let's talk a little bit about the idea of value proposition itself. So when you talk about value proposition, what it is, value proposition is just a statement. It's a statement that says, well, you know, this is what I can do for you to resolve your problem. Okay. But so that value proposition itself is fairly easy to come up with. Where the sophistication of value proposition, and remember I told you earlier today isn't really about playbook. Today is really about the quality of a particular section or a particular play in your playbook that's going to increase your conversion ratio. So today's a quality play. And when we talk about the quality play, you really have to recognize that doing the bare minimum of what value proposition's definition is wouldn't be enough. Okay, I'm going to tell you what my product would do and how I can solve your problem. I wouldn't say everyone does that, but bread and butter. I can tell you that your customers are also, well, sorry, your competitors probably doing the same thing as well. So if you aren't able to articulate it where it's relevant for your actual person that you're talking to, then you're not going to talk about the conversion ratio, right? If you're converting from 33% in that stage, you want to convert to 43%. Communication or the value proposition and the relevance is the technique I'm talking about. So when you move, let's talk about this. So first of all, when you think about your value proposition, and when I talked about the idea of various different identified avatar must have different value proposition, this is what I'm talking about. So first things first, if you don't have a value proposition library, I'm going to encourage you, we always tabulate things here because our playbook is in HubSpot. You'll see in a little bit what I'm going to talk about HubSpot, but our playbook is in HubSpot, and in there we have very specific plays that we work on depending on the avatar type. Here, everything is about avatar, because if you don't have specific avatar plays and everyone's generic, it doesn't help. Like for us, we have a playbook for startup companies that's just funded or just got their seed round. We have an avatar type where they're at the $2 to $30 million mark, really not struggling, really struggling or having issues with predictability and a repeatable process. Things are still very dependent on the salesperson. And then we have enterprise level training, where it's a bit more about exactly what we talk about today, right? Quality of the conversion ratio. How can we increase the conversion ratio stage to stage by 5%, even 1%? Sometimes 1 or 2% quality difference in the earlier stages can mean millions of dollars because of where the quality is placed earlier on in the pipeline. I guess I shouldn't surprise you. I have an engineering background. I'm very technical from a number standpoint. When we calculate, everything has to make sense. So in the playbook, first things first, I'm going to encourage you is to have that target market. And even in that target market, we actually break it down to the nth degree of in that target market. If I'm dealing with a sales manager that is new, right? It may be a founder and they haven't never really been in a sales position before, but they need to run their sales team because they are a startup. They don't have well-defined department. The founder is going to run the sales team, right? Versus same idea in the small mid-sized market space, we might have founders that knows that's their background. So even within the same target market, you might have different avatars. But first things first, having that customer or target market and the avatar that you're serving and have a clear idea who you're talking about or talking to, right? What are their needs? What are they looking for? Next, of course, is the specific value. What do you bring to the table? Now, by understanding the target, you realize that what you bring to the table is fundamentally different, despite the fact that your product is identical. The way that you draw relevance is going to be different. So which is number 3. So now you're the product, what your value is. Then you have to think. I have my number one thing, which is my target market, and hopefully bring it down a notch. We're also at the avatar stage. My avatar and the value proposition I bring to the table. 3 is actually where the rubber hits the road. That's the one area that tells me that separate a good sales rep versus a great sales rep is that customer connection. Now, knowing 1 and 2, how do I draw emotional connection to this customer that allows them to want to buy our product to solve their problem? I always say in the customer journey, if there's no problem, identify, forget it. There's plenty of fish in the market. Forget about chasing those deals. Takes too long, right? When your lag time is so long, you could have closed 3 deals. So forget about. I always have reps. I'm going to convince them. Forget it. Don't convince anybody of anything. Go and identify people with problem that you can solve and then make a connection. You're not selling them anything either. Okay, it's always about, I'm selling them something. You're not. You have to start to tell your rep or you just tell yourself, you're not selling them anything. Right? You are trying to resolve a problem through conversation. If you can't find that there's a problem you can solve, say, hey, you know what? I've done my discovery. Sounds like you're in good shape. Doesn't sound like you need sales training at all or sales technology upgrade. Why don't you call me when you need us again? Right? Really going through the motion of true listening to the other person. A lot of times, if they fall in your lap, the chances are that there is a problem you could resolve. No one spends time with you for no reason. Okay, if they're interested in talking to you, there's something that they think that they want from you that they think that you can resolve for them. But if you're not asking the right questions, then you can't link up your 1 and your 2. If you can't link up your 1 and your 2 to equate to number 3, then that's where sales training would come into play. But that's what ultimately I'm talking about when I talk about conversion ratio. So far, so good? All right. Next, okay. I want to make sure that we know what value proposition is versus what value proposition isn't, because I get this question quite a bit. Of course, everyone knows the happiest place on earth is Disney, right? But the happiest place on earth is not a value proposition. Okay, happiest place on earth is a slogan. Can you think about it, right? By the definition, I'm going to go back to the last slide. By definition, if you think about a target market specific value, trying to draw a connection, happiest place on earth doesn't really do any of that, right? It's a slogan. So also go back to what you think is value proposition for your organization and separate them. How, what of, which one of the value proposition is a slogan versus which of your value proposition are true value proposition. Next, value proposition is also not a positioning statement. What I mean by that is value propositions are broad, and then until we get to the unique client value proposition, we'll talk about that at the end. But while position statements laser focus, right? So you also have to think a little bit about that. So for customers who want to purchase a wide range of product online with quick delivery, we provide one-stop online shopping site. Amazon, right? So that's where you are in the market. Last but not least, complicated. So of course, if you go, and I'm going to read you this one, I found it very interesting. Revenue focused, marketing, automation, and sales effectiveness solution unleash collaboration throughout the revenue cycle. What the hell are you saying? Like if the person on the other end can't make and understand what you're trying to say, then whatever you just said is wasted wasted real estate or wasted airtime. So if you think about value proposition, I think one other thing that I would highly suggest you think about is the idea of doctor-patient relationship. So if whatever you're trying to say in the value proposition is not something a doctor would tell a patient to resolve their problem or ease their pain, then likely that is not a value proposition. It's going to advance you in your sales pipeline or sales advancement for the day. Make sense? Great. Now, let's talk about what a good value proposition or the element of good value proposition should be. I put a dollar bill, a tip jar in there in the cafe because it's very apparent. I know exactly what a tip jar is about. You have to put a tip in the jar. And then what I really like the trend lately is tip, money for school, money for traveling. There's a purpose. So when you look at that tip jar, you know exactly what to do. And value proposition needs to be easy to understand like that. So first things first, of course, what I said was it needs to be clear and easy to understand whatever your value proposition is. Number two, you need to communicate the concrete result, right? Taking training with us allows you to increase your conversion ratio up to 15%. How you are different or better than competitors. I hate to say it, I'm in the CPSA world, right? Fantastic roster of trainer here that's certified. So what does that mean? How am I better? We do custom training associated in every one of our training curriculum actually starts off with an assessment. So it's tailored to resolve the pain point and the problem that you have, right? Majority of the trainer here do CAN training. So how are you different, right? By having custom training, that's why we're getting that concrete result of increased conversion ratio by at least 12 to 15%. Connect value to the customer, right? That's a relevant part I'm talking about. That's great. You have great value you bring to the table. But if you leave someone thinking, well, what does it matter to me? Then your value proposition, no matter how great it is, isn't drawing relevant. Isn't drawing relevance means, like I said, once again, wasted airtime. Next, you want to avoid the jargon. So when we first started, actually, when we were a sales consultancy, we love to use jargon. So whenever we think about our value proposition, we're thinking about a sexy way of wrapping it up in these fancy word so that it can be out. It can be communicated with our marketing folks and be using it for our marketing needs. As we get more sophisticated through the years, 10 years, we realize it doesn't have to be the same verbiage, right? Your jargon's your jargon. The sexy marketing stuff is your sexy marketing stuff. Your sexy marketing stuff and your value proposition that you try to use to draw relevance with your client actually doesn't need to be the exact same words. Could be the same product, could be the same value, but it doesn't have to be the same word. As a matter of fact, there are research shown that there's a Columbo effect. As a matter of fact, if you're too slick as a salesperson, it comes off showy. If it comes off showy, then it sounds fake. So a bit of that value proposition has to be one where you, not a bit, I think I am a full-time sales rep. So it's not a show. It truly is a genuine conversation with the person to find where you can resolve the problem and genuinely want to help that problem with a solution that you have. Like I said, if you can't find the issue, then you need to move on. And of course, I'm sure Riplin will talk to me about this next, is now, how do you have a conversation so that you can find that connection? That's an area that reps miss a lot as well, because they ask the service question is asked, and then they move on, not really truly finding the connection there. That concludes this section. So far, so good. Any questions?
We do have one question, Agnes. You referred to avatars at the beginning of the presentation a little bit. Are avatars the same as personas, and how many personas should you be building UVPs for?
That's fantastic. I always say, depending on what type of business you do, right? Every business is slightly different, but if you think about the idea of your customers, depending on your B2B business or B2C business, 20% of your avatar will give you 80% of the business. So, and that could be 2 avatars, it could be 10 avatar, but definitely have those 20% of the avatar laid out so that you can be more effective with those 20%. Make sense?
Thank you so much.
And your first question was, are avatars the same as personas? I think for your sake, I can say that it is. There are slight differences, like in our workbook, between a persona and a avatar. Avatar is a bit more black and white. Avatar is more 34 to 54 in a director position, with 2 kids, divorced, live in Oakville, right? They get their information from Forbes, right? Versus persona, we talked a lot more about the buying trigger. It gets a little bit more in depth into exactly what make that person tick. But one in the same, and I think in today's conversation, for today's conversation, you can treat them as exactly the same. If you have, some of our clients actually, they really embrace the idea of avatars and personas, so avatars, and they actually have cute names for them, right? Like escape my mind, like Silly Susan or Bullish Bobby. So it allows, that becomes an everyday language. So in the office, I'm dealing with Bullish Bobby today. Anybody can, I got this objection today from Bullish Bobby. Anybody have worked with Bullish Bobby before and can figure out a way to reply to this objection? Stuff like that, where you truly make those avatar part of everyday language. Is the other key to a better conversion ratio is the idea that your reps are actually sharing information, right? You only, one rep can only entertain so many clients at one time. So if your collective knowledge of figuring these avatar out and trying to improve your conversion ratio as a group, you get there a lot faster from an optimization standpoint. Great. Let's continue. So how to tailor your value propositions. I'm going to go and give you a framework. I love framework. So we're going to talk about framework today. So it's called a value proposition canvas. So this really resonated with me. In the factory, we make products. In the drugstore, we sell hope. And that's a fundamental difference of a good value proposition versus a great value proposition. And I see that in the field every day. Like we encourage reps to use the likes of Gong or Chorus so we can hear the conversation. And we listen to the conversation. I can still see, even in today's world, a lot of the rep conversation sits on the product side, right? I make this product, we have this feature, versus you really gotta understand the drug itself isn't a product. The reason why drugs are so expensive is because drug sells hope, right? So when you talk about this value proposition canvas, here are the things that we have to consider. Now, forget about the customer side for a second, right? Let's focus on ourselves. We know how to focus on ourselves. We're good at focus on ourselves. So let's start off with the value map. If you have crappy product, you have no value, you're not going to be here anyways. You folded. So I'm going to assume that we have a good product on hand. Now, we have a good product on hand. I'm thinking, well, first thing first, right? What we call gain creator. So what features offer brings value to the customer? So let's list a bunch of those features out. Start off there. Everyone knows features. So I'm not concerned about you guys not knowing what your main feature, top feature, the most influential feature, the most effective feature, those features that you want to actually sell your client. Now, in the product and service side, we want to talk about the actual product and service, right? Whatever it is, right? For me, for example, sales training. A sales training isn't a gain creator. Our gain creator is customized module, right? If you think about that. Last but not least, pain reliever. What is it in what I just told you in my feature or product that is going or have a chance of lessening my customer's pain point? Okay, that's one side of the equation when I'm trying to come up with good value proposition or great value proposition. The other side of the equation is the customer profile. So you think about that. Number one is the gain. What benefit is the customer expected and needed? Okay, what is it that they're trying to get? Number two, there's some research on this too. Customer will pay 7-to-1 for removing a pain than to pay for getting a gain. Think about 7-to-1. They will pay 7-to-1. So getting your pain right is very important. So what are the negative experiences I've experienced today on your customer that get them to want to buy, right? Let's say a CRM, right? Let's say a listening tool, right? A lot of when we first started using a listening tool, I have reps kicking and screaming. Those are my clients. Those are my conversations. I don't want you to listen to them, right? But if you actually think but the problem I was trying to resolve was there was a very, very low conversion ratio. So by implementing that, removing the management's problem, right? The rep actually, once they got used to it, they were quite happy with the result because they were getting real-time feedback on what words to use, what words to not use. They were able to listen to each other's calls so they can see what worked versus what didn't work. They are excelling at a pace that they have never excelled before. And of course, as a result, earning more commission than ever before, right? So definitely the gain and the pain sometimes go hand in hand. And the other thing is the actual customer's job, the task they're trying to perform. Okay, so how much of the task what are they trying to do? What are they trying to resolve and do? The pain and the gain generally comes from the fact that they have to do a job. There's no pain or no gain if they don't have to do anything. So really truly understanding what is it that they're trying to do. So now, I told you we use HubSpot here. We are a HubSpot implementer. So great, easy to use CRM platform, right? I don't know how many of you guys are on HubSpot at the moment or not on HubSpot or on CRM, not on CRM. HubSpot has such a fantastic stack in resolving problems. So if you look at that, let's take a look. So in terms of gain, let's say product first. Well, it's a CRM, it's a sales hub, there's a marketing hub, there's an operations hub, tons, field service hub, sales service hubs, so much marketing hub. So now let's look at the CRM side, the sales side of things. In terms of gain creator, we're trying to streamline the actual contract management process. Okay, who likes to do paperwork? Which salesperson that you have ever talked to enjoy the paperwork of their job? Say nobody. So if there is a feature that allows me to remove that pain, you see I'm trying to draw draw a line right to those pain points, right? Productivity tool. Okay, so those are productivity tools, and there's so much more. Like their automated dialer, mass dialer. Like I'm just in love lately with one of their plugin, which is their mass dialer, functionality. Love it. Okay, anyway, so much features. Then what pain am I trying to relieve? So visibly across tools, what are we talking about there? And simplify system interface, right? I love HubSpot's interface because it's easy to navigate, it's easy to use. And we all know, as is, no one likes to use CRM for the sake of using a CRM. So what is the carrot associated? And the number one thing before we can even talk about carrot is an easy to use interface for implementation. Now, next, when we move over to the customer side, what are we trying to gain? Well, we want better visibility, right? Better rep visibility, but ultimately we want increased sales. Now, the pain I'm trying to resolve is the low visibility. I know you made 32 calls today, or you went and visit, and you have 4 lunches today. What exactly happened, right? Am I closer to a close? Because one of the things that as managers and as reps too, when you look at it, sometimes we know a deal is stalling. We just know it. We have an intuition. We've been in sales, we've been doing this long enough to know this is stalling, but we keep having lunch with this decision maker or decision influencer. We keep having Zoom calls, like on today's world, right? Virtual coffees, whatever that is, but we know we're not advancing the deal to the next stage. We have a lot of activities, right? But at the end of the day, what we care about is an efficient way to get you to the next stage, not continuously be stepping or playing in the same stage. Because there are other clients, if you have the transparency of, there are really fancy tool that measures the engagement of your clients as well. If there are engagement score that allows you to see which one is more active, which one you can close tomorrow, you can definitely be sure that I'll be working on those more than I would like to have 7 lunch with the same persons over 7 weeks, right? That become a time waster. So definitely dealing with that. And last but not least, if you think about the customer's job, obviously this one is, this particular canvas was built for the sales manager avatar. So we want to enable the team. We want to increase the revenue. That's my job, right? My job as a sales manager is to make sure that we increase top line. So what does that look like? So with those two, you're able to figure out what is it that you need as a value proposition. Now, everything boils down to the idea of the buyer's needs. Okay, if I can't get to a buyer's needs in our conversation, I'm never going to be able to close them. And you have to realize that there are 5 types of buyer's needs. Number 1, there is what we call the situational buyer's needs, right? Something happened, hence I need to buy something. So I love this example, but I know it's not as relevant here. But for example, I need prenatal product now because I'm pregnant. Okay, that's a situational thing. I'm pregnant, I need this product, right? Something happened and hence I need this. Next, you've discovered a functional need, okay, based on a desire for a feature. So for example, I need prenatal product now because I'm low in iron, okay? As a function of something, I'm doing something about it. It's a functional requirement. 3 is a social requirement based on a desire to belong. I need prenatal product now because my mummy friends are all taking it. Okay. Number 4, psychological barriers need. There is a desire for reassurance. I need a particular brand of prenatal product because it's reputable. Like that's where branding comes into play. Last but not least, there's a knowledge buyer's need. I have a desire to learn. I need to know how prenatal product can help me and my baby. Okay. The reason why this is important, because I told you, value proposition needs to address a need. And the reason why this particular side is even more important is because you see how the prenatal products have different verbiage associated, depending on what need you have defined. So if you're talking to a person that needs this product, let's say from a situational standpoint, they just got pregnant and hence they need prenatal product, and you address this problem, you are pitching this person and you use the fact that, oh, I'm going to sell you my brand name. Our brand is the best in this marketplace. The likes of Jennifer Lopez uses it. Means nothing to the situational buyer, because the situational buyer is buying it because they have something. They have a need. So the ability to figure out from a buyer standpoint, is that a situation only functionally, social needs, psychological need, or knowledge need is very important, because your verbiage that come out from your value proposition would differ accordingly. Remember earlier on in the conversation, that defines the difference between a great rep versus a good rep. Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes to, let me see what time are we. Oh shoot, man, I cut content so that I won't go over. But okay, buyers needs exercise. So really trying to think of your ideal customer avatar. So number one, what type of decisions are they making? What kind of buyer needs will they exhibit? And number 3, what type of content will you need to create to advance them to the selection stage, right? Really step by step, trying to figure it out. Members have, a lot of people say sales is an art, and there's obviously science to it. Where the art comes in is someone's intuition and experience. This is a very structured process I'm walking you through. But if someone have done 1,000 times before, through trial and error, they're naturally going to know right away what to do in that situation. That isn't because that person have the art of sales. It just means that they have enough sample size in their head to know what to do. So same idea. I can't stop for this exercise at the moment. Apologize for that. But buyers needs, really, number 1, what type of decisions? Number 2, what kind of buyers needs will they exhibit? And last but not least, definitely give them the right words at the right time so that you can advance your stage. Keep that in mind. Everything is about advancing to the next stage. I have rep that focus on advancing them to close. Every conversation is about going to close, and we have to scale that back. No, your job isn't getting to close. Your job is to get them to the next stage, right? If you push them to close, you're pushing them to a no quicker because you're not focusing on the right thing. Understanding your own value proposition. So one of the things, we talked a lot today about the general overview of value proposition and how value proposition alignment with the various different avatars. One of the things I do want to bring out that's even more powerful than general value proposition is your unique value proposition. So of course, being an engineer by trade, I use a Venn diagram. So if you think about that, right, there's a prospect and the prospect's need in one circle. There's the client right? Prospect meaning us, and there is the competition at play. So where the prospect, us, and the client overlap, that's the opportunity to close a deal. Okay, so you have quite a bit of place to close the deal. But if you think about it, our competitors and the client also have the same chances of closing a deal because our overlap is the same. Now, where the unique value, you see where all three overlap, it means our value proposition is the same as a competitor's value proposition. That's what we call the Me Too value. Me Too values are what we call, when we decipher all the words, Me Too value is your competitive necessity. If you don't have that, you're at a disadvantage. Okay, the Me Too value is a competitive necessity. A lot of my clients, they go to trade shows. They may or may not do very well before talking to us about our trade show program, but they go to a trade show not because they want to, they think it's a drag, but they go because all the competitors there. So they feel like if they don't show up for a trade show, the industry is going to be talking about, oh my God, what happened to them? Why aren't they at the trade show this year? Maybe they're not doing so good after COVID. They can't even afford to come to trade shows anymore, right? So the idea of competitive necessity, you go because you have to. You have to build this value because you want to be on the same level playing field as everyone else. There is then where your competitors doesn't play, where only you play, and where you overlap with the client. That's what we call the unique value proposition. And that's the thing that you need to pitch more of, because that's the thing that you have over your competitor, your competitive advantage. Okay, your particular value that you bring that no one else can bring to the table. I've been working with Zoom Info a lot lately, right? Zoom Info have been making some very strategic acquired acquisitions, allowing them to add to their, if you think Zoom Info, you think database, right? But they've added so much technology to their database, so much tech behind the database, that there's quite a bit of unique value proposition in there that other database actually can't keep up, right? Now Zoom Info isn't just a database, right, or decision maker database. It is really a tech play now. Unique value proposition. Now, when we talk about unique value proposition, I always go back to that, what we call the FAT model. Okay, the FAT model starts off with F as being the feature. So feature, you know what it is, right? 27-inch TV. Who watches 27-inch TV? I'm not. 75-inch TV. Okay. Next is advantage. So what would the advantage do for me? Right? I always say, okay, the week before Super Bowl, that's the week that has the most TV sales, most actually large TV sales. 75-inch TV, 85-inch TV goes the week before Super Bowl. The advantage is that when the guys come over, they can see the game, you know, they can see the game on TV. It's bigger, there's a better party atmosphere, every play can be dissected. Fantastic, right? As an advantage. But let's be honest, the benefit, which is why people buy, right, is the fact that, man, I'm gonna be the coolest kid on the block. I've just hosted the Super Bowl party, 85-inch TV. I'm gonna be the talk of town for a while. I'm cool, right? That's what I'm trying to get at, is as you work through, and there's time and place for selling an F, there's a time and place for selling an A, there's a time and place for selling a B. But really understand how to move through smoothly in your sales conversation, such that there are some F in the conversation, some A in the conversation, and some B in the conversation. Key being, you cannot just focus on F and A and not go to the B, right? B is ultimately where you are going to draw that alignment and the relevance to your customers' feelings. And yes, people might have to fill out, if you're a B2B business, they might have to fill out a procurement form to get you hired, but I'm working with a bunch of architects to talk about the score sheets. But the score sheet can be swayed if you know what you're doing, even when it comes to government contracts. nailing the B is everything. And that's today's conversation. Any questions for me?
Thanks so much, Agnes. Yeah, there's one question here, but just a reminder to the group today, please feel free to enter any questions you may have on today's content into the chat, and then I can read them aloud to Agnes. Here's a good one, and Brian has kindly responded his response as well. But how do you provide evidence to support your claims of value in your unique value proposition if you're a brand new business?
That's tough, and definitely tough. So in terms of a brand new business, I would imagine you have to start off with some testimonial. I can tell you when we first started 11 years ago, God, you say you're the best sales trainer in the world. How are you the best sales trainer? You don't even have a sales background. You have an engineering background. Now, obviously, we started with management consulting, and I had background there. But a big part of that is going to be through a strategy where maybe you have to accumulate like clients at a lower price point than you want to, but you do need that clientele. My suggestion is you do need proof. That being said, a lot of conversations, if you think about it, have much to do with the fact that how convincing you are as a rep, right? But no, I think there is a quality piece of it as well. So as a startup, a big part of it is also accumulating those values. And if you need to shy away from the statistics in the beginning and focus on the quality of your conversation with the stakeholder, then focus on the conversation. A lot of my startup have a lot of pilot programs, right? Getting them to take a chance on you for a very low risk, right? Understanding like if you want to sign a deal with one of the big guys, you know their signing threshold per manager might be $25,000 and it's $125,000. Understanding the signing authority for the threshold and getting them to a pilot where they believe in you. They're going to take a chance on you, but how are you going to come to a table with something that allows them to take a chance on you? That's have less to do with value. Value proposition needs to be there, but a lot of that has to do with deal structuring and knowing the beginning stage of prospecting and trying to build up a pipeline. Great question though.
Thanks, Agnes. Here's another one. What role does UVP have if, when all is said and done, the client always brings it down to money or cost of your product or service?
When in the cost of your service, actually I always do this. So you have to understand the concept of pricing. So your customer, and you can't blame them. The customer is going to want to pay the least amount they can pay to get the product. You are, as a rep, want to sell for the most amount you can get for the product, right? So ultimately, there's going to be maybe there'll be a gap, right? And how you bridge that gap is the idea of FAB. So if you're able to sell them on feature that they value and put a dollar amount to that value, naturally, the lowest money, like the highest they would want to pay, is going to add a couple bucks, let's say ABC. Right? If you hit on the right F, you get a couple more bucks. If you hit on the right A, you get a couple more bucks. You can hit on the right B, you get a couple more bucks. So it just tells me that we haven't built out our value proposition in a way that for them to translate it back to dollar and cent. Ultimately, my job as a rep is to get that highest they would pay to the highest they would pay to the lowest I would sell the product for. I'm trying to get that overlap. I'm not sure if you're seeing my hand. Right? You're getting this side to go up. I'm getting this side to be hopefully come down a little bit and find that overlap. That's when a deal happens. So still continue. That's a great question. Still continue to sell them on value. It means that we haven't connected value to a dollar and cent. Work out your ROI calculator with them, right? Start to have the conversation around, okay, if I'm, let's say, taking sales training is going to increase your conversion ratio 12 to 15%. You are $3 million business right now. 12 to 15% of that will bring you to, close to $4 million next year. So paying X dollar amount for training, going to return $1 million, right? You might not want to pay it, but the value is there from a dollar and cent standpoint. You just have to get used to having that value conversation, allowing them to see the value.
Thank you, Agnes.
I can stay a couple more minutes overtime if you have one more question.
Here's a good one. Do you have a favorite sales book or podcast that you'd recommend on this topic?
On this particular topic, I'm just looking at my list of books here that I can pull out. I always have books that I like. Let me see if I have one on the bookshelf. How about I send it to you guys after? There's a few sales books that I really like Frantic Sales. I love. I'm in the middle of reading a book called Let's Get Real. Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. So I'm a sales book junkie. So I can definitely suggest some sales books.
Thanks, Agnes. Do we have time for one more? Or are we okay?
One last one.
Okay, here's a good one. Susan is asking for another example of a good value proposition and one that is not so good.
Oh, let me see. Why don't you give me one that you? Why don't we dissect it? I think that's probably better than giving you a good one versus a bad one. So if you dissect one, let's say give me a value proposition. Who asked that question?
Susan asked that. Susan, do you want to go ahead and put one in the chat, or what we can do is we can go through this via email afterwards.
But let me help you dissect it. I just can't come up with one right now. But keep in mind a great value proposition. When you hear that value proposition, you have to know for sure that who the customer they're trying to address. You have to understand that there's a problem they're trying to address and that there is a solution within the same sentence. If you can clearly articulate that in the sentence, then likely you have a great value proposition. If you can't have all three elements, the chances are, and it's too vague, then the chances are the value proposition wouldn't drive relevance. The difference really, if you really come down to it, is whether it drives relevance of the person you're trying to pitch to, or is it just words? If it's just words, then I have a lot of reps who don't know what they're doing. It's like sticking a spaghetti on a wall, right? You throw out a bunch of value proposition and you hope one of them stick. But a great rep would ask enough questions so that when they go in for the punch, they know exactly which one to sell them, and that is going to stick.
Thank you so much, Agnes, and thanks everybody for staying with us over time. I think we're good to close everything up today. I'd like to thank Agnes, of course, for such a fantastic presentation on EVPs and for everybody who's joined us today. Please head on over to cpsa.com/events for our upcoming session on August 11th, which is going to be a virtual networking session called Give, Get, Gain. Is your sales team comfortable discussing money? We will see everybody then, and have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.